Okay, so the next thing I really want to discuss is an article written by Karen Turpin. I loved her article. It was brilliant. So I actually found her on YouTube, and then I found the article that she references to. So she was actually one of the first people that I found that talked about the false ascension matrix. So I just want to talk about that particular article. So a big shout out to Karen Turpin, and I can highly recommend you find her YouTube channel. So I'm just going to find her article. One second. So I just had a glitch in the matrix. Just as I was bringing up the article, my Wi-Fi went down. It's probably because I'm in the garden. I'm not reading into it, but just for fun, I'm reading into it. It's getting really hot now in my garden, so I'm not going to stay out too long because it is getting really, really hot. So this is a really amazing article. I highly recommend it. I'm just going to sit down for a bit in my little lounge garden chair. It's just because I want to be out of the sun because it's really, really hot. Okay, so I'm just going to read some paragraphs from this amazing article. It's called The False Ascension Matrix. How does it affect you? And you can find it on Google. Just Google The False Ascension Matrix by Karen Turpin. So that's Turpin. And she wrote it on December 28th, 2018. It's a brilliant article. It really resonated with me, and I found out so much information from this one article. So if you're interested in the whole idea of a possibility, I'm just putting it out there, the possibility of a false ascension matrix timeline, then you might want to read it. You know, like all the great spiritual teachers in our community, they say everything is possible, you know. So, and they say it themselves. They're like, question everything. And then also I keep getting this message about how, if there's something that's gnawing at you and you just can't let it go, keep researching it. Get right to the bottom of it. Keep researching it until the end, until you... Hello, I'm back. Okay, so as I was saying, I've heard this concept of like, if there's something that's really like nagging at you and you just can't let it go, and then you need to pursue that. You need to, go and research it till the end, until you're satisfied, or until it leads you to something else, because that's all we're really doing. We're just all trying to figure out, what this reality is. So right now I'm on this sort of mission to try to figure out, what is reality, why are we here, stuff like that. And it's just really interests me. It's esoteric information, is not for everybody, but it's just something that I'm really feeling drawn to and driven to. And I want to thank all the spiritual teachers in the spiritual community. I've learned so much from them. They've really helped me, and now I'm like kind of thinking, I need to delve deeper, and as they all encourage, keep go down deeper, try to figure out more information and stuff like that. And I always like the fact that they always say that all timelines are possible. If you think it, then yeah, it's possible. So I really appreciate that. I mean, ultimately, what is the truth? Nobody knows really. There's certain things that are truth no matter what, whether they're observed or not. I read somewhere someone said that if there was no one left on this planet, 2 plus 2 would still equal 4, and that's absolute truth. So there are universal truths, there are natural laws that are truth no matter what, and they don't depend on our perspective, and they don't depend on us believing it or not. They're just truth. So I think that's all ultimately we are searching for. Okay, I'm just really enjoying sitting in my garden, and it's just really nice and peaceful, and I'm just looking at the plants and trees of the trees from neighbor gardens, that I feel really thankful that I can see them from my garden. So just looking at the blue sky and the little fluffy white clouds that have come up now. So yeah, Okay, so let's talk about this article and see what stuff we come up with. Before I do that, I just want to wish everybody good health and hope everyone is in good health, staying safe, and no matter what's happening out in the world, we can go within and try to, find things that give us, joy and be in alignment. And if we're going through a period of time where we're, feeling a bit, sad or anything like that, that's totally fine. And just create a space for yourself to feel those feelings and to validate them, because they just want to be heard, really. Like I was going through that yesterday morning, and I created a space for myself and allowed myself to miss the things that I miss, and then once I did that, I felt cathartic. I was like, okay, I feel heard. Like my feelings were like, okay, I feel heard now. Thank you. So yeah, but yeah, I just want to wish everyone good health, and I hope everyone is feeling good. And the best thing we can do is really, get out into our gardens. And if you don't have a garden, then, use your 1 day allowance that we are given to, get out into nature if you can. I know that parks are closed, so whatever green area you can get to, or just being outside generally, just breathing in the fresh air and, the sun and everything, it can be very rejuvenating. And and I know it's really difficult to find the foods that we want, but eating oranges really helps with boosting our immune system. And now that I feel like now that the weather is getting warmer, everyone is just feeling in a better mood, and I just feel like things are gonna get better. I hope. I have faith. I don't want to give a timeline to it, because if it doesn't come to pass, then we'll all be disappointed. So I'm trying not to put a timeline on it. But I had this strong feeling that end of April things will get better. So I'm trying not to pin my hopes on that, but in a way I kind of still am thinking that, but we'll see. Well, let's just take it 1 day at a time for now, and then just see how it goes. Okay, that's enough me rambling. I rambled too much. Okay, so let's talk about this article. Actually, now that the sun's gone down, I'm gonna do some more grounding work and walk back and forth. My microphone just fell out. That's why I went a bit silent. I'm hoping everyone is having a nice Easter weekend. And I didn't have any Easter eggs. I could have bought some from Tesco's when I went the other day, when I bought, essential stuff, but I don't know, I guess I just didn't really feel like it. But now I'm like thinking, I wish I had. So I instead had a teaspoon of Nutella instead. Kind of same thing as chocolate, isn't it? That's what I said to myself. Okay, so, the sun's come out just as I start grounding. I'm gonna try to walk in the, I don't know, it's fine. Maybe I'll just sit back in the shaded area. Okay, so the article that I'm going to read some paragraphs and discuss is The False Ascension Matrix. How does it affect you? Written by Karen Turpin, December 28th, 2018. And you can find it on medium.com, or if you just Google it, it'll come up. So in this article, she discusses the 4D astral plane. So in the spiritual community, the concept is that right now we are in 3D Earth. So there's 3D, and then there's 4D, and then there's 5D. So 4D is the astral plane, which some say has been hijacked by, the beings that, of lower vibrating entities. And for the sense of this article, I'm just going to call them archons. So she's like, so if you're on any form of ascension path and you're not aware that 4D and 5D have been taken over by the false ascension matrix, then you're operating your body like a computer without virus protection. So there are two lines of thought about the 4D and the 5D. So most say in the spiritual community that 4D, yes, has been taken over by the archons, but 5D hasn't. But this article and quite a few, not that many actually, only a few people within the spiritual circles are saying that, even 5D has been, I don't want to say corrupted, I don't want to say hijacked, that's not a word, hijacked. But some people are saying, it is a possibility, because all things are possible. So for the sake of this discussion of this article, let's just go with what Karen Turpin is saying. So if you're on any form of ascension path and you're not aware that 4D and 5D have been taken over by the false ascension matrix, she says that because you're not aware of it, you could be at risk of falling into, I don't want to say at risk because I don't want to scare you either. So let's just go with what she's saying. So if you're not aware of it, you're operating your body like a computer without virus protection. As they say, knowledge is power. So the more we know about things, the more we can enlighten ourselves. And I think that, we should pursue knowledge that might help us to gain a better perspective of what's actually happening. And then she says, and like most computers that have been hacked, you could risk losing not just your data, but your identity, your sense of self, and your future ability to incarnate into a human form. So that part, I was like, I don't really understand what she means. I'm like, and now that I read what the priestess said in the earlier message, how she said that if there's a possibility if you go to 5D, then you lose your physical form. And so then what Karen is saying, that you might lose the ability to incarnate into a human form. So we then just become energy, but not have a body. And that actually kind of like made me think, I don't think I want to lose my ability to incarnate into human form. Maybe, the idea of, you could just be energy and light. Maybe everyone is actually thriving to be, human, to have a physical body, to have physical experiences. And that's actually the, thing that everyone wants. And when I say everyone, I say other entities. Okay. The false ascension matrix is not a new phenomena, but not many know of it, and that means many human souls risk becoming lost within its black hole technology if they fail to awaken in time, if they are unable to see through its illusions and false claims. So that's really interesting. She says that if you're not aware of it, then you might become lost within the black hole technology. So she then says, the false ascension matrix is a gross manipulation of humanity and the earth fields. So what happened and how did we get here? So this is a really good paragraph. She summarizes it perfectly. So the original plan, she says, was that 3D Earth was destined to experience a natural organic ascension process at the end of this current time cycle of approximately 26,500 years. 500,000 years. So I've also heard about this concept from other people saying that, how the Earth was coming close to its closure, and that's why all attention from the universe is on Earth right now, because Earth is coming to its completion of its end cycle. So I really like how she summarized that really, really well. So she's saying that the Earth was already destined to experience a natural organic ascension process, which happens at the end of 26,500 years. Some say at around 21st of December 2012, but more likely sometime between 2017 and 2020. So that's really interesting, because when we had the 2012 event, there was a lot of negative connotations around that event, saying because of the Mayan calendar. I don't know much about it, but there was a lot of hoopla about, oh, it's going to be end of days and it's going to be apocalyptic and the end is the earth is going to end. But none of that actually happened. I even watched the film 2012 on New Year's Eve, when bringing into 2012, but and some say in the spiritual community that that was purposely hijacked to put a negative spin on what was actually a great spiritual event. So that's really interesting that she uses that date. But then what I found even more interesting in that she's saying that this natural organic ascension process is more likely to happen between 2017 and 2020. And that actually makes a lot of sense, because I started to have my awakening in 2017, and then there was this big surge in spiritual community between 2018 and particularly 2019. A lot of spiritual communities coming on YouTube and Instagram, and a lot of people awakening and trying to figure out what reality is, and yeah, so that actually makes sense when she says those dates. So then the next part she says is, this ascension process was to involve all of humanity, the earth and all of its kingdoms, plants, animal, mineral, Devic. I don't know what Devic is. Devic. There would be a change in frequency and effectively a change in the focus of our consciousness so there would be a change in frequency and a change in the focus of our consciousness from one reality to another. So she's saying that if everything went to plan, there would have been a naturally organic we would have naturally and organically ascended into the next dimensional space which we know as 5D. In other words, we would have made a 4-dimensional shift. So if everything went according to plan, she's saying that there would have been a natural change in frequency, and our focus of our consciousness would have shifted from one reality to another. So if everything went to plan, we would have naturally and organically ascended into the next dimensional space, which we know as 5D. We would have made a 4-dimensional shift. And as we did so, we would have reclaimed the parts of our spiritual identity that exist as 4D, 5D, and 6D, which would see us more and more into the truth of who we really are as sovereign and free beings. So that is in alignment with what I was talking about earlier. The big message that I keep getting is sovereignty from all of these I don't know, I don't want to call them outliers, but people in the spiritual community that are talking about the possibility of a false ascension timeline matrix. Okay, so let's continue. I have to say, it really helps me because I've watched the video a couple of times, and I've read the article as well, and it just really helps for me to just discuss the article with you guys and to really break it down. It kind of helps to concrete the ideas in my head, so I really appreciate to have this platform, and I hope that Karen Turpin doesn't mind me reading the article in my podcast, because I just think it's a great article, so I just want to discuss every single thing that she is saying. Okay, so the next part she says is, oh yeah, so this was a question I had, and she answers it perfectly because I didn't get it throughout 2019. I kept hearing about, oh yeah, shifting to 5D, and I'm like thinking, what about 4D? Why are we skipping 4D? Why are we not ascending from 3D to 4D and then 5D? Why are we totally skipping a whole dimension? So I never quite understood that. And actually Magenta Pixie explains it as well, that 4D is just it's like an astral plane to control 3D, and it's not actually a place you want to live or be in. So that kind of made sense as well. So then Karen Turpin says, why would we go to 5D and not 4D? Because the 4D astral plane is the level of existence most people pass into when they drop their physical body. So 4D is an astral plane. It's the level it's a dimension where where people pass into when they leave their physical body, when they become back to their like spirit energy. And it's from there that you then reincarnate back into another earthly life. So basically the idea is that when you leave 3D Earth, you drop your physical body, you get out of your physical body, and then you become, your soul, your energy, your spirit, whatever you want to call it, the essence of who you are. And then it's from this 4D astral plane that you then reincarnate back into 3D Earth, back into an earthly life. And she says that 4D is not an ascension point, and it's and she explains how it's a dimensional band that holds the collective unconscious mind of humanity. Okay, so this is a really important sentence that even I didn't register completely, but I am now because I'm reading it with you guys. So 4D is a dimensional band that holds the collective unconscious mind of humanity. So you probably hear a lot about, the collective consciousness. What is the collective consciousness? So if you think of it as a sea of all our thoughts, all our feelings, all of humanity's Akashic records from the history to the present moment, all our thoughts are fed into this collective consciousness, and we can all tap into it to feel, to get information, to get knowledge from the human collective consciousness. So if you think of it as the big ocean of all these human thoughts and feelings and ideas and karma and history and our Akashic records and dreams and hopes, and then all of us are like streams coming from the ocean, but we all then feed back into the collective consciousness. So this is really interesting. I didn't realize that 4D is the dimensional band where the collective unconscious mind of humanity exists. So the 4D is a dimensional band that holds the collective unconscious mind of humanity. All of our pain, trauma, fear, and anger, as well as soul-based trauma. The energy of debauched sexual dreams and fantasies, which is satanic energy. It also holds the soul bodies of people who have passed and those who have become trapped as lost souls or clones. Okay, so let's go back to that again. So 4D is a dimensional band which holds the collective unconscious mind, and it contains unconscious mind of humanity, and it contains our pain, trauma, fear, and anger, as well as soul-based trauma. It also holds the soul bodies of people who have passed and those who have become trapped as lost souls or clones. So not only does it hold our collective unconscious mind of negative feelings and pain, but it also contains the soul bodies of people who have passed but haven't been able to transcend that dimension and go to the next one, and they've become lost souls or clones. It holds the soulless and dementor types of entities that feed off the energy of 3D humans. So that's a really important point that I want to say again. So it also it also holds the soulless, and in Harry Potter where you have these dementors that feed off the fear and stuff, so that sort of thing. So 4D has these negative entities that are actually feeding off the energy from 3D humans. So our negative feelings are kind of like food for them. And then she says there are also some 4D angelic energies, some ETs, and many tricksters and holographic inserts. So doesn't sound like a really nice place to live, basically. But I have heard that it's usually, like, I think Magenta Pixie talks about this as well, that it's one of the first dimensions that you visit when you are astral traveling and things like that. And so then Karen Turpin says, basically, it's not an enlightened plane of existence, and it's not a place that you would want to hang around in for too long if we really understood what exists there. But it is usually the first dimensional level beyond the physical plane that we become aware of when we begin to open up spiritually. Okay, so when we open up spiritually, it's one of the first dimensional levels beyond this 3D physical plane that we then become aware of. And then she says that it's, it can feel exciting place to explore beyond this physical reality. And she says at 4D, we are able to access the bliss states that are common through tantric practices, trance dance, chanting, and so on. Those feel good states when there is nothing but love. But the more gullible among us believe they have reached high states of consciousness due to these feelings of euphoria. So this is actually a type of complacency implant designed for emotional manipulation. It is important to understand that the 4D level is where the artificial technology is created. So she says this is actually a type of complacency implant designed for emotional manipulation. It is important to understand that the 4D level is where the artificial technology is inserted to create the false ascension matrix, even though it is controlled from the higher dimensions of 5D. Okay, so that was a lot of information. Let's unpack it. So basically, there's like a software sort of already implanted in sort of 4D. From what I'm understanding, what she's saying is that it's meant to make you feel bliss and all these euphoric feelings, but that's not actually real, and it's sort of like you're being emotionally manipulated. And she says that 4D level is where the artificial technology is inserted to create the false ascension matrix. So basically, the artificial technology is inserted into the 4D level to where to create this false ascension matrix, even though it's controlled from the higher dimensions of 5D. Okay, I hope you're still with me. I know it's quite a lot to get through, and it's quite very, very esoteric, but it'll make sense. I mean, you'll probably have to meditate on it and to maybe like go back to it and read the article yourself and then watch the YouTube video as well, because she actually reads the article. She talks about the article in her video. So it's Karen Turpin. You can look for it, and yeah, just search for false ascension matrix and you will find it. Okay, so let's move on to the next paragraph. So then she says the false ascension matrix actually controls 4D, 5D, and 6D levels of the planet. And if we are aligned to it, it controls those levels of our own body too. So maybe that, I don't know, is that related to our chakra levels? So I was listening to a YouTube video, and I can't remember who it was, but she was like saying, if you go to all the chakra levels, like the first sacral is the sacral level, I think, the base one, and if you ask, do I feel safe? Do I feel like I have all the necessary things that I need, like money, food, shelter? And if you say yes, then you're then able to move on to the next chakra level. So let me say that again. So the false ascension matrix controls those levels of our body too. So technology exists there that blocks off our natural spiritual development ascension process by blocking the body at a point between the solar plexus and the heart on the Hara line. This point needs to be open to receive the spiritual energies of the soul body as it comes in through the spiritual awakening process. But if it cannot do that, the soul may be captured and harvested to be used by the negative agenda, and sometimes to create a clone which may be used at a later date by the grey aliens. This is also something quite similar to what the YouTube video I was talking about earlier on from Priestess, oh, let me find her name. Okay, so her name is Priestess Sekhmet. I don't even know if I'm saying it right, but she also talked about how there is a danger that I think she says it if you go to the false 5D dimension, which is, I don't know if she says it is a virtual false reality where you lose your physical body and then your energy can be harvested by, the negative entities. So I'm not exactly sure. I will have to check that. So the next paragraph, she says, this false software looks and feels normal, but it isn't. Being in the false ascension matrix is similar to being in a bubble or a cocoon of energy that traps the spiritual seeker. So she's saying that we may pass through these levels on our spiritual awakening journey, because you can learn a lot there, but anyone who spends too long may be taken out of their natural timeline and left stranded in a timeline where growth is capped. So that's really interesting, saying how, if you spend too much time there, you might be taken off your natural timeline and just left stranded there, and where your spiritual growth is then capped. You can't ascend further. So then she says the problem is that they will think they're making great progress because it feels so good in this bubble, and they will not want to leave. So this is something I actually felt as well, because I was like, there's a lot of people saying, "Oh, I feel so good. I'm in 5D Earth. I'm in New Earth," and I'm just looking around thinking, I don't feel that. I don't feel that. So I was like, oh, maybe I'm not vibrating high enough. But now it kind of makes sense that maybe it's just a euphoric false reality, a virtual reality. Who knows? I'm just thought experimenting. I'm just philosophizing about this. I don't know. I don't know the answers. I'm just discussing it. Whatever's in my brain. I'm listening to this YouTuber called the Overthink Project, which I came across through my research. I feel like my higher self was leaving me clues to find it. It was really weird how I came across it. And basically, he discusses these esoteric information as well, because he's like, I don't have anyone in my life to talk about all of these things, and he's like, I'm just discussing it. I don't know the answer, but just by talking about it, I'm just opening up discussions and dialogue and stuff like that. So that's my purpose as well. I'm just talking about all of these things to try to better understand it. So okay, so then Karen Turpin says, anyone who spends too long may be taken out of their natural timeline and left stranded in a timeline where growth is capped. So the problem is that you will think that you're making great progress, but because it feels so good in the bubble, and that you might not want to leave. And then what she says next is really profound. She says that she herself has witnessed many people, friends, colleagues, and students. So she says that she even seen herself that friends, colleagues, students have become completely trapped within this matrix. Their energy field becomes enmeshed in 5D or is siphoned at 4D astral levels, and it is really difficult to unplug them from this matrix because of the mind control that exists there. And then that was like, wow, that was like a real wake up call for me. Unfortunately, they believe that they are really waking up and progressing, and so they are completely unwilling to hear anything that they perceive to be negative. They have bought into the myth that there is only light and love at 5D. They think they are safe and that they are growing, but nothing could be further from the truth. So that's something new coming from me, because I also thought, oh, 5D is just, it's going to be blissful, it's going to be heaven on earth, it's going to be pure light and just euphoria. But there's also another idea that, who knows? We don't know. So the next part of the paragraph. So then she says there are some who don't recognize that they're stuck, but don't know. Oh no, she says there are some people who do recognize that they are stuck, but they don't know how to escape. I actually kind of felt like that as well, like a couple of months ago when all this stuff kicked off, and I kept thinking, I feel like I'm stuck in the wrong dimension. Like, what is going on in the world right now? It just happened so fast and so quickly, and I kept searching and searching, like I feel like I'm in the wrong dimension. And then I think that's how I finally found Karen Turpin's YouTube video. So then she says there are some who do recognize that they are stuck, but they don't know how to escape, as they don't know what's happening. Sorry about the noise in the background. So there are some who do recognize that they are stuck, but don't know how to escape, as they don't know what's happening in their own energy field. Most people, though, don't know that they are stuck, nor do they understand the frequency fields they are tapping into that keep them stuck when they do their tarot readings, channeling, chanting, Reiki, healing, and so on. So they don't, even when they're doing all these readings, they can't realize that they are stuck. Actually, came across this whole idea of frequency field. Somebody left me a comment about this website, about the frequency field, about this artificial matrix that surrounds planet Earth. So that's something I do want to discuss in a future podcast episode, because talks about the whole reversal 55 grid, and how, when you try to connect with a true divine source, you kind of sometimes feel pushed back and like thrown to the floor, metaphorically, and you're like thinking, what's going on? And it's because there's this force field, there's this fence around the earth, trying to, I think, not trying to block our connection with true divine source, but make it hard for us to do so. But that's definitely something I do want to discuss in a future episode, because those articles are really, really interesting. You might be thinking, what is all this negative entities and archons and all of this stuff? They go by different names in different cultures, in different religions. So they're, if you think of them as these different beings that have supernatural power, but they feed off the energy from humans. I know some people that I trust like completely, and they have told me stories about seeing these negative entities, and I believe them, 100%, because they're such good people, and I truly, like, what they say, I truly believe that. Hello, and welcome back to part 2 of my discussion of the False Ascension Matrix article by Karen Turpin. I'm now in my study room, so I thought I won't have the birds singing in the background as my ambiance, as my soundtrack. So instead, what I've got is, on my computer, I've got the Adrift Theta meditative music soundtrack by Christopher Lloyd. I've actually purchased this music license so that I can use it in my YouTube videos, and it just produces a very calming effect on your brain waves. It's theta waves. I can't remember exactly what theta waves does, so I will look it up for you. So, as I was saying, I have purchased the music license for this particular soundtrack, this music piece, background music. It's Drift Theta by Christopher Lloyd Clarke. And so the concept of theta, this is probably the most popular choice of frequency. I'm just reading from the enlightenedaudio.com website, which is Christopher Lloyd Clarke's actual website. So he tells you that theta is probably the most popular choice of frequency. The theta state is a state of tremendous stress relief. The benefits associated with theta level relaxation include improved concentration, reduced hyperactivity, and improved memory. While in a state of theta relaxation, one's blood pressure, breathing, and heart rate all slow to a much more restful and healthy level that promotes natural healing. During theta relaxation, one may also experience vivid flashes of mental imagery as the mind opens to memories or subconscious information that is not available to the conscious mind during the normal waking state. The Theta state is a very deep state of relaxation that is excellent for deep hypnosis and mental programming. So, yeah, I just love listening to Theta music in the background, and I just find it really relaxing. So I thought it would be the perfect soundtrack to have in my podcast when we're discussing esoteric information. So you can be in a relaxed state, and maybe it will tap into some hidden memories that you can, unlock from your Akashic records or DNA activation. Who knows? But it's just really nice and relaxing. So, okay, enough me rambling. Oh, sorry. Just before I move on to the actual article, the other soundtrack that you can probably hear sounds of a fireplace and pages flipping. I've actually got the soundtrack of studying at Hogwarts, the Gryffindor Common Room. So there's this website called the website is called soundsambient.mixer.com. I'm going to link in the description in my YouTube video what that link is. So it's just a website where you can, it has a free Creative Commons license, which means that you can use it for your YouTube videos, and all you have to do is link to the actual website of the particular soundtrack that you're using and to give credit. And it's just, and you can make your own as well. You can make different ambient sounds, which is really fun to do. They have lots of sound effects. It's a really cool website. So this one I'm particularly using is really popular. It's the Gryffindor Common Room, and I just love the description. So I'm just going to read it to you so that you can imagine that while I'm talking to you, while you're listening to this podcast, you can just imagine that you are sitting in the Gryffindor Common Room. If you're a Harry Potter fan, which I am, you might enjoy this. So this particular soundtrack was created by E.I. Okay, so Gryffindor Common Room. You're sitting in a comfortable chair in front of the fireplace in the Gryffindor Common Room. As the evening wind swirls against the windows, you've got a book to read and a cup of tea that you've charmed to stay warm and stir itself on occasion. And even though you have some homework left to do, you feel very much at ease. So if you just imagine that you're sitting in the Gryffindor Common Room and I'm sitting there next to you, we're sitting in front of the fireplace, you've got a cup of tea or hot chocolate, whatever you like, maybe a cup of coffee, and I'm discussing with you all these esoteric informations, and it's just a really comfortable and relaxing atmosphere. So I thought I would just set that up, which is kind of like another level. It's just really fun to do. Okay, so enough rambling. That's a really long introduction. So this is part 2. You would have just heard part 1, which is the discussion of the false Ascension matrix. So this is Karen Turpin's article, which you can find online. If you just put into Google the false Ascension matrix, how does it affect you, by Karen Turpin, Turpin, it'll come up, and it's on the medium.com website. Okay, so I'm just going to discuss the next part of the article. So in the previous part, I spoke about how there are some people that don't recognize that they are stuck in this false reality, but then there are other people that do realize and do sense that there's something wrong, and that they are in, the false matrix. So then the next part she discusses, Karen Turpin talks about the negative agendas plan. What is the negative agendas plan? It is, in essence, it's about control, about controlling humanity and preventing us from truly awakening and realizing the power that we have in us and what we can actually achieve. So Karen Turpin says, and I quote, "The negative agenda's plan is to control humanity and prevent us from truly awakening. And so it makes sense that if they gain control of the 5th dimension, they can control the outcome of those awakening to that level." So you have different levels of awakening. So right now we are in 3D, and people are aspiring to awaken to get to the fifth dimension. So Karen Turpin is saying that the negative entities, they have this agenda to hijack 5D. So if they can hijack the fifth dimension, then they can control the people that are awakening to that level, to the fifth dimension level. She then talks about how she then says, but it gets worse. So Karen Turpin says, the fifth dimensional timelines have been hijacked by those aligned to a negative agenda. So according to Karen Turpin, she says that the fifth dimensional timelines have been hijacked by the negative agenda, and that human souls are being actively recruited and risk losing control of their consciousness simply by willing yet unwittingly being aligned to that false timeline. So I'm just going to break that sentence up because it's really, really profound. So if we think of the dark team, or the dark agenda, the negative agenda, they have hijacked the fifth dimensional timeline, and that human souls that are awakening to 5D, they're being actively recruited without them actually being aware of it, and that they are aligning themselves to this fifth dimensional timeline, but it's actually a false timeline. So then Karen Turpin says, therefore, those humans who are gearing up for a 5D ascension believe it'll be one of love and light. But in fact, they will find themselves in a matrix that takes over their life force and consciousness. And they will no longer be able to determine what is real and what is not. Okay, so did you guys get that? So the negative agenda have hijacked 5D dimensional timelines, and human souls are being actively recruited without their knowledge, and they risk losing control of their consciousness because they are aligning themselves to that false timeline. So humans that are gearing up, getting ready for the 5D ascension, believe that their 5D, the new earth, will be one of love and light, but in fact they'll find themselves in a matrix that takes control over their consciousness, and they're not going to be able to determine what is real and what is not. And then Karen Turpin says, even more horribly, once taken over like this, they will eventually provide bodies for ET beings to use in order to gain entry to this planet in a physical form. Okay, so that is really interesting. So not only will so according to Karen Turpin, so if you just think of it as like as a philosophical thought experiment, so according to this article, so these humans that are ascending to this false timeline, this 5D timeline, not only are they going to not realize what's real and what's not real and be in this false timeline, there's also a risk that they can be taken over by ET beings that are going to use their bodies to gain entry to this planet in a physical form. So there might be some ETs that can't access planet Earth because they don't have a physical form, but they can hijack a human being and then gain access to planet Earth. Okay, so Karen Turpin then says, there are a number of ET groups working in this negative agenda. However, for simplicity and for the purpose of this article, let's say that none of the factions that have control of 5D and 7D parallel Earth timelines are your friends. Okay, so Karen Turpin, according to Karen Turpin, she says that there are a number of ET groups that are working within this negative agenda. And so she's saying for simplicity's sake and for this article, for the purpose of this article, let's just say that none of these factions that have taken control of 5D and also 7D, so not only 5D but also 7D parallel Earth timelines. So that's a really important point that I want to get across. These are parallel Earth timelines, okay? So if you've ever watched I don't want to say the show because then if you've not watched it, I've given a huge... okay, I'm not going to say the TV show, but if you watched a particular TV show, you'll recognize what TV show I'm talking about. There's two parallel worlds. There's one world and then there's a parallel world, a parallel Earth. And okay, so Karen Turpin is saying that basically these ET groups, not all, so basically these ET groups that are working in this negative agenda. So she's not saying all ET groups, but only those that are working in alliance with the negative agenda that have taken control over 5D and 7D parallel Earth timelines are not your friend, she says. They are not going to encourage you towards your personal sovereignty, freedom and liberation, however much they may spout this in their channelings, okay? So I'm just going to say that again. They are not, so the way you can tell whether these beings are from false light or true light, just really discern, just use your discernment. Like, do they encourage your sovereignty and your freedom and liberation? And just listen to how you feel when you listen to them. Are they making you feel shame, or are they giving you lots of, fluffy, light information, but then also, throwing in some stuff that doesn't really resonate for you and doesn't really, make you feel good, kind of makes you feel uncomfortable. I also read somewhere that another way to tell, false light, if someone keeps saying, oh, you're going to be stuck reincarnating forever because you haven't dealt with your karma. It's almost like a threat. And I used to get that as well. And I'm like, that doesn't sound right. So basically Karen Turpin is saying that they're not going to encourage you towards your personal sovereignty, freedom and liberation, however much they may spout this in their channelings. Okay, so then she next says, at this time on planet Earth, we are experiencing a dimensional shift. Remember, this article was written back in 2018, December 28th, 2018, and now we're in 2020, April 2020. So can you see like what's happening in the world right now? Like, can you see how this false ascension matrix is a possibility? I'm not saying it is. I'm just discussing it as a philosophical thought experiment. So the purpose of this podcast episode is just to discuss ideas. That's all I'm doing here. I'm just discussing different ideas. I'm not saying that this is actually happening. I'm just exploring the idea and the concepts because it's just really interesting to do, and I just really enjoy it. I just love discussing esoteric information and having these philosophical thought experiment discussions. So then Karen Turpin then says, at this time on planet Earth, we are experiencing a dimensional shift. This is written in universal law, okay? So, according to universal law, this planet is going to experience a dimensional shift. There's no one can do anything about that. It's naturally going to ascend. And so, according to okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. My timer just went off. Okay, so let's get back to the article. This is really fun. I'm really enjoying this. And now I can record podcasts even when I come back inside and I'm no longer in the garden. I just love talking about all of this stuff. It's just really, really interesting for me. And I really appreciate you listening to it as well, so you can join in on the discussion, because I don't really have anyone in my life, in my real life, that I can talk about all of this stuff with. Okay, so Karen Turpin says, at this time on planet Earth, we are experiencing a dimensional shift. This is written in universal law, and there is nothing the negative agenda can really do about it, other than to create artificial timelines that they themselves control. This actually is in alignment with what Magenta Pixie also talks about, how, the Earth is already on this paradise positive ascension timeline, and it got shifted from the negative Armageddon timeline, but the dark side, I don't know, whatever you want to call them, the cabal, the deep state, the Illuminati, the elite, the 1%. They've got lots of different names. I guess I'm just going to call them the dark agenda, or the negative agenda. They're trying to get the Earth back on their negative agenda timeline by creating artificial timelines that they themselves control. So then Karen Turpin says they do everything they can to encourage humanity to step on up into the shiny new level of awakening that they will feel absolutely wonderful. So basically they're trying to encourage this artificial ascension, this artificial timeline, to encourage humanity to get into this shiny level of awakening, but it's actually going to be a false matrix timeline. So then the next part Karen Turpin talks about is, what does the false ascension matrix look like? So you're probably wondering, am I in the false ascension matrix? How will I know? How do you know? It reminds me of the film Matrix, which is an amazing film. If you've not seen it, I highly recommend it. I loved it when it first came out back in 1999. It's brilliant. And I also heard that it was produced by the Light team to help people awaken of the possibility of, the Matrix idea, like a metaphor sort of thing. Okay, so Karen Turpin discusses next, what does the false ascension matrix look like? So then she says, Earth history has been distorted and mostly hidden from us, and it's not what we think. And it's not what we think it is. Actually, this is something I've heard from other people as well, that a lot of our history has been removed from our Akashic records, from our memories, or from history, and it's a way for the dark agenda to control us, so that we don't know our actual real history. So Karen Turpin says, from time immemorial, the negatives have been at play here, and through the use of reversal coding and manipulation, most, if not all, of what we thought was real in terms of esoteric or occult teachings or mystery school teachings are not truly aligned to God source. So that's really interesting. It's almost like they've hijacked esoteric and occult teachings and mystery school teachings and possibly magic as well, to their own agenda, and have moved it away from aligning to God's source, and they've hidden that knowledge, that power from us, because they don't want us to have that power, because they want to control us, and the way they can control us is by hiding that knowledge from us. So this actually reminds me of that previous article about the corrupt demiurge that I spoke about in the podcast of the false dimension and the demiurge and the archons. Okay, so next, what she talks about. I love Karen Turpin's article. I'm just I love this article. That's why I'm analyzing every single sentence. Okay, so the next paragraph is the Anunnaki? I don't know how to say that word. Hold on. Okay, I'm probably not saying it right, but it's an alien race, and it's the Anunnaki. Okay, there we go. The Anunnaki alien race have controlled the teachings of Thoth. So I've heard of this concept of Thoth. I don't know anything about it, but I came across it when I was researching the demiurge. So I do want to look into it, and I have heard that it's a really deep rabbit hole if you go into that one. So in a future episode. Okay. So the Anunnaki, an alien race, have controlled the teachings of Thoth. So Thoth is spelled Thoth. And by extension, the mystery school teachings related to Thoth, including certain factions of the Melchizedeks, I'm not saying that right, and the Maitreya teachings, archangels, ascended masters, Aleister Crowley. Now, this name Aleister Crowley keeps popping up. It sounds really familiar, like I don't know this name, but have you ever watched Supernatural? And I'm sure there's a character, Aleister Crowley, where he's like a crossroad demon or something like that. I'm going to look into who Aleister Crowley is because that name does keep popping up. Okay, so Aleister Crowley, tarot schools, and basically anything that represents an external bracket from self, God, angel, archangel, channel, or ET group. So basically, I think she's saying that this alien race has controlled the teachings of Thoth, including the ascended, so she says, including certain factions of archangels, ascended masters, Aleister Crowley, tarot schools, channeling, ET groups. Not all, just certain factions. And then she says, this also includes many of the guru disciple programs run through ashrams and many of the healing modalities that align to off-planet energies. ET groups and secret government Illuminati have also infiltrated all of the organized religions on planet Earth. Okay, so then she says, okay, hold on, let's look up who Aleister Crowley is because that name does keep popping up. Okay, so I'm just looking up Aleister Crowley. He was born in 1875 and died in 1947. He was an English occultist, a ceremonial magician, a poet, painter, novelist, and mountaineer. He founded the religion of Thelema, maybe it's pronounced Thelema, identifying himself as the prophet entrusted with guiding humanity into the Aeon of Horus in the early 20th century. A prolific writer, he published widely over the course of his life. Okay, so he was an occultist. So I just found this other article and it says, Aleister Crowley, the wickedest man in the world. Okay, so he's primarily known for his occult writings and teachings. He founded the religion I just mentioned, and he was also a highly controversial member of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, where he was known by the magical name of Frater Perdurabo. Crowley's lifestyle was absolutely shocking in the area in which he lived. Besides his interest in the occult, he spoke vocally against Christianity, was vocally defiant against Christianity, and Victorian and post-Victorian prudishness, and was a drug addict. He detested Christianity. He considered himself an immensely religious and spiritual person, and he considered himself to be a prophet. And Crowley's beliefs included pursuing the great work, which included gaining self-knowledge and uniting with the larger universe. He also encouraged seeking out one's ultimate destiny or purpose, commonly referred to as one's true will. So according to this other article, controversial.com, he was perhaps the most controversial and misunderstood personality to figure in the new era of modern-day witchcraft, known by the popular press of his time as the Great Beast and the wickedest man in the world. Crowley was a powerful magician, poet, and famed occultist. He was also a one-time witch, though most of the elders of the craft would discredit him the title. So Crowley, like many men before him, was a man before his time. He lived in a society that could little understand him or appreciate his writings. His writings shocked the people of his era. And okay, so there's like lots of controversy around him. I mean, I don't know. Was he of false light? Was he evil? Was he good? Who knows? I don't know anything about him, but his name does come up a lot. So I'm going to have to figure it out at a later time. Okay, let's get back to Karen Turpin's article before I go off on a tangent. Okay, so Karen Turpin says, many New Age teachings draw on ancient symbolism, invocations, and rituals, much of which is reverse coded to siphon energy from the user. Okay, so this is really interesting. So she says that many New Age teachings draw on ancient symbolism, invocations, and rituals, but it's reverse coded. So that way, when you do it, it's actually siphoning energy from the user, siphoning energy from the person who's doing it, thinking that they're going to get energy inside their body, but the energy is actually leaving their body and feeding these archons, these negative entities. Some that teach external Merkaba mechanics. I've heard that word Merkaba a lot. That's something I need to look into as well. Some that teach external Merkaba mechanics and offer rapid acceleration techniques, DNA template activations, and the light may actually be causing damage to a person's light body and DNA, which also then allows for siphoning of energy and consciousness. So this is something I've heard from other people in this small spiritual circle of, asking like, what's really going on, coming up with this, with these questions like, is there a false ascension matrix as well? And how, how they sometimes say, oh, if you're feeling tired, that's a good thing. That means you're ascending. But I've heard others saying that, is that really true? Or are they just siphoning off our energy? And these, spiritual people are just saying, oh no, that's a good thing that you're feeling low energy. It's because you're ascending. But what if the reason you're feeling low energy is because your energy is actually being siphoned. Your light body energy is being siphoned off to feed these archons. I mean, it's something to ponder over. I mean, I don't know. I'm just asking questions. I'm just discussing possibilities. I mean, it's possible. And it just made me think. I'm like, that could be a possibility. Like if the negative agenda wanted to hijack the spiritual community, the New Age, they could easily do that by just reverse coding certain practices so that when someone did those things, they could then siphon off the energy from the light body. Who knows? I'm just putting it out there as a philosophical thought experiment. Okay, so the next sentence. It can be really confusing to sort through all of the numerous belief systems and modalities that are available to us in this highly profitable spiritual industry, quote unquote. She puts it in quotes, spiritual industry. I mean, I have noticed that there has been a huge surge in spiritual YouTube channels and things like that. I think we saw a huge surge, especially in 2018 and especially in 2019. So, interesting. Okay, so Karen Turpin then says, our ascension was designed to be a natural, organic process. So it was already going to happen naturally, organically. We didn't really have to do anything about it. We don't have to do anything. It was just going to happen. So, through the use of mind control technology and psychotronics, disinformation, and alien implants to create non-human behavior patterns. So, alien implants, we've got software that might have been implanted into our head. I don't know how they would have done that. Maybe it's a metaphor, or maybe it's literal. Many humans are losing their way and are only too happy to follow a belief system or modality that promises them salvation, safety, and peace. At this time, many people are even looking towards ETs to come and help us, or to take away all the bad people in government and make it all better for us here on Earth. These people are unwittingly giving their power away to a group of ETs that they don't even know, the very same group that have manipulated the time fields to align their own negative agenda, and who have carefully selected speakers, channels as their hosts and mouthpieces on Earth. These are often the hybrids and walk-ins. There is a reason they are not born on Earth at this time. They are not your friends. So that's like giving me chills. Okay, so the next part, Karen Turpin says. So before I move on to the next paragraph, so I'm just going to summarize basically what she just said. So she said that, there is a possibility that there could be a negative agenda behind this whole push of, this ascension, that, maybe it's not the organic one. Who knows? I don't know. Okay, next part. Fear as a control mechanism. There are several artificial timelines available to us that we may choose to participate with, and one example is the Armageddon timeline. This one includes terrorist threats, disease epidemics, food shortages, global warming, financial collapse, and so on. Anything that is designed to put us into fear. And you already know what's happening right now, so I don't even have to put that on the list. Anything that is designed to put us into fear, as this is the low frequency the negative agenda feeds off. So they actually feed off. So these negative entities, they feed off this low frequency of fear. So the negative, the dark, I don't know what to call them, the dark agenda, they orchestrate certain events, certain global events, which I'm not going to say, to then cause humans to be in fear. And then this low frequency is food, is fuel for these negative entities to feed off on. So we can see this all around us in this chaotic time on the planet. I mean, literally, we can see this right now. Unfortunately, the Armageddon timeline appears to be one that our government, in fact, most governments on planet Earth, are trying to promote. So they're trying to align to that Armageddon timeline. And this is something that I have heard other spiritual teachers talk about as well. Magenta Pixie talks about the Armageddon timeline, and how the cabal, the deep state, whatever you want to call them, are trying to activate that timeline. So Karen Turpin says, when we are in a state of fear, the natural default is survival mode. This takes us into our reptilian brain, which clearly is not the most conscious part of us. It's where we are less likely to feel connected to God, spirit, or experience any intuitive or creative thoughts. In this state, we are more likely to follow the crowd and relinquish our ability to think freely and consciously. So when we're in that fear mode, we're then into our reptilian brain, and we're not thinking rationally, and we're less likely to feel connected to God, and we can't really experience in our intuition, can't really listen to our inner voice, in our thoughts or creative thoughts. And then in that state, we kind of then just follow the crowd and just follow what everyone else is doing, and relinquish our critical thought, critical thinking, our freedom. And then she says, it's much easier to manage an obedient crowd, which is exactly what the negative agenda wants. So what does the negative agenda want? They want compliant people, enslaved and controllable humans. Okay, So when I was listening to this, I was like, oh my God, this makes so much sense. And then literally in my head, I was thinking, but how do I get out of this false ascension matrix? And then the next part, she actually says, how do I get out of the false ascension matrix? And I was like, oh, thank God, there's an answer. Okay, so how do I get out of the false ascension matrix? Karen Turpin says, please take care. It's a minefield out there. Or should I say mind field? And I thought that was really funny. Let go of anything of the mind. Let go of the systems and rituals and come back into your heart. Okay? Come back into self, the inner sanctum, the God self. Let your only guidance come from the God within. Put down your ancient books and cards. You need no external physical tools to connect with God. So I thought that was really interesting. So she's basically saying, just let go of the systems, let go of the rituals, come back into your heart. So that's the message I kept getting was, go within, and connect with God directly. So she says you don't actually need external physical tools to connect with God. You can just connect with God and just have a conversation with God directly, which comes back to what I discussed in a previous episode, Conversations with God, the book that I'm reading. The book that I'm listening to at the moment. So you can just directly talk to God and just open a dialogue, and God will talk back to you. I actually personally love angel cards, so I will still do them. But that's what I'm talking about. You read an article and you pick out what resonates for you, and then you build on. And you think, oh no, I still want to do angel cards. I still want to do tarot cards. That's okay. That's totally valid. This is just one perspective. So you take what resonates for you, and then you add it to what you already like doing, or what already is resonating for you, and you just add to it, and then you just build your own model as such. So, but her main message is you don't need external physical tools to connect with God. That is true. You don't. But it's fun to have angel card readings, just to tap into the collective consciousness, or to tap into the angelic realm. Okay. So her final paragraph is, only by reclaiming our spiritual identity can we remember our true divinity. There is much work to be done on ourselves so that we may consciously navigate the timelines of the 5D false ascension matrices. We must pay attention now in order to rise beyond all of these falsities, in order to access multi-dimensional levels of self and align to the natural organic timelines as a divine ascending human, as God intended. So that was really positive. I like how the article ends on a positive note, that by reclaiming our spiritual identity and by remembering our true divinity, remembering that who we are, that we are these sovereign, powerful beings that are connected to God's source, and that we can connect to God, directly. We can rise beyond all of these 5D false ascension matrix timelines, and then we can access multi-dimensional levels and then align ourselves to the natural organic timeline. So we can just align ourselves to the natural organic timeline, which is there. It's right there. We just have to resonate ourselves and to align ourselves to the timeline, and then we'll be on that timeline. Or, regardless of what's happening in the world, you can still ascend, even in this chaotic global lockdown, or whatever that is happening, because that's what God intended. God intended for us to naturally, organically ascend as divine ascending human beings. So so that's a really positive thing. So I would say just connect directly with God. If you still want to use your physical tools, absolutely go for it, because I still will. I still use my angel cards. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just another way of connecting with God, connecting with spirit, connecting with the spiritual realm. But just being aware of this possibility of a false ascension matrix is just interesting to to meditate on and to discuss it. And just being aware of it, I think it gives you power. It kind of like uncovers, another layer of programming that might be out there. I'm not saying it's there. I'm not saying it's definitely there. So don't get worried. I'm just discussing it as a thought experiment, as a possibility. But I think the biggest message is that if you go within, if you connect directly with God, work on your relationship with God's source, open a dialogue, listen to God, God will speak to you, through thoughts, images, experiences that you feel, your feelings, and even words directly, or synchronicity, or messages through some, synchronistic ways, and just being open to that, and then working on things that give you joy. If you're in a state of joy and love, that will naturally align you to the positive ascending timeline. So if you move away from fear, it's okay to feel fearful. Absolutely, there's no need to dampen that or to bury it. Validate it, acknowledge it, and talk to your fear feelings and say, what are you feeling fearful of, and then have an open discussion, have a dialogue about it, and then just naturally, when you're ready, shift again to feelings of creativity and peace and harmony and love, if you can. And for me, creating things helps me to be in a higher vibrational state. Like, I love creating these podcasts. I love creating quote pictures. I love reading esoteric information, and I just love researching about all of this stuff, about the dark agenda, because, if I'm aware of it, then it doesn't have power over me, because I don't get blindsided. If something happens in the 3D reality, I'm like, oh yeah, I already knew about it because I already read the theory and read the research, or I heard about it from YouTube videos. And so, yeah, so I hope you enjoyed that little podcast, and I will end this episode right now and catch you in the next one. Okay, take care. And again, I highly recommend you read the article for yourself, because it's really, really well written, and it's full of quantum information and enlightenment. Okay, thank you so much, Karen Turpin, for writing that article and allowing us to read the information. So thank you. Okay, bye for now. Sending you lots of love.